Arguably the most important industry gathering around software-defined networking is the Open Networking Summit. It's happening the week of April 15th, and it's sold out at 1,500 attendees. In 2012, it sold out at 900, and they ran out of chairs, literally. But this year, there's a wrinkle. The large companies have gotten involved with SDN. They've gathered around a coalition called the Open Daylight Foundation, and they've basically officially pushed SDN into the mainstream. So what does that mean for the technology? We sat down with Dan Pitt. He's the executive director of the Open Networking Foundation, the group that puts on the Open Networking Summit, and got his take on where the conversation around SDN is going these days.
Well, Craig, I think the conversation is too large to be controlled by anybody. A couple of years ago, we sort of were the dominant voices of it and explaining what in the world it was. Now most people have some idea what it means to them. There's not a uniform definition. I mean, to us, the essential part is the separation of forwarding and control, but it's a very large space. And the conversation is going on in many quarters. Certainly, we're a big part of it. The implementers are a big part of it. So are the deployers a big part of it. And you can see that in not just ONF and what's happening with Open Daylight, but you can see it in the Network Functions Virtualization Group in ETSI, where all these carriers have come together. And it's not like it's coincident with SDN, but this is the foundation for it. And in the user groups that have sprung up to talk about SDN, I was at 3 user group meetings in January and February, dominated by enterprises.
Oh, okay.
So they're talking about it as well.
All right. Now, are they worried about vendor lock-in? Because you do have the big companies coming in, and that's generally a concern. How would we prevent that, or is that a concern right now?
It's always been a concern to some of the customers and the customer base. Not to all. I've spoken with some that aren't so concerned about that. If it meets their needs and it's not a huge part of the budget, they don't really care. But the predominant part of the marketplace does care, and we care. So we have been focusing, as you know, on what we call the OpenFlow substrate, which is the southbound interface, to make that a standard implemented in software and in hardware that people can just rely on. Above that, it's software and it's APIs. And we have stayed away from standardizing software APIs in committee, expecting that the market will come up with those itself through experimentation in software, which is easily modifiable and that. And the software interfaces that become de facto standards are the ones that the marketplace has voted for. So while there are always some concerns about vendor lock-in, I think in the software world it's going to be, in some ways, a more open ball game. There will be more entrants and more choices. I've spoken with people that aren't concerned so much about there being a single northbound API. They figure there'll be several that they will use, and they'll accommodate those. So I think it's a little different from what we're used to in networking.
Okay.
Because it's more software and not protocols.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the lock-in would come from the hardware side in a traditional network.
It has in the past, and it's possible to do it in software when you have to have a convention somewhere, and people would just like to rely on one thing, and that one thing is not controlled by a community, but rather by a single vendor. It has happened, as we know.
Yeah, okay. Now, when I went to the first Open Networking Summit, that's the one that had 400 people, I guess, and it's gone from 400 to 900, you were saying, to...
Now, we've capped at 1,500, and we're oversold.
Sold out, okay. But that first one, it was a very startup-oriented world, lots of startups. And you had like NEC, which is not a startup, but which is relatively unknown to the US networking world. Sure. Now everybody's in on it, all the big companies. But how does that change things? How does that change life for the startups that did so much of the work early on?
Well, so when the big companies come in, it suggests there's a big market, and they can invest with big bucks. The startup companies then find either they have somebody big to compete with, or somebody big to sell through, or someone big to be acquired by. And I think what you're seeing in the startup world is, how can I find a market need? Can I meet it immediately, get some traction with customers, and grow, and see if I become a candidate for IPO or attractive as an acquisition target?
when you look at Open Daylight, you've got so many big names in there. Obviously, it seems like this is sort of the official notice that SDN is for real, and that everyone's going to take it seriously. What do you see when you saw that announcement?
I see the size of the investment these companies are making in developing SDN and OpenFlow-based products. If they're investing that much, they are seeing a market opportunity. And frankly, we've heard from a number of customers that are putting out RFPs that are asking for SDN and OpenFlow.
Okay. So what made all this click in the first place? I mean, SDN, it serves customer needs, I know all that, but how did this catch on so much, so fast?
So, I had a project like this in my lab at Bay Networks in the late 90s.
Bay Networks, okay.
Yeah, and in Nortel, and it was actually on the web until last year. It's hidden in a server somewhere. And AT&T claims to have invented the term in 1990. I have no idea if that's true or not. But I think two main factors have enabled it to catch on. One, it's become possible, actually. It just wasn't feasible before. And that's because of the advances in chips and the advances in distributed systems and in open software. The scale at which the data centers have built out using commercial off-the-shelf hardware and commodity servers and open source operating systems is just astonishing. And that has taught us that you can build amazing things with the stuff that's available now. And it's just that we now know how to do distributed systems and software. We have advances in software engineering, and we have chips that do amazing things. It's just become possible, and with storage, possible to do this. Second factor, I think, is that operators of networks have been tantalized by the ability to control and program them themselves. And I think witness mainly the over-the-tops, Amazon and Google and so on. It's like, why can't I do that too?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a case of seeing what's possible and being able to just learn from it or try it out yourself, I guess. And
frankly, always a business imperative. If it's possible, someone else will do it if I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dan, good luck with the Open Networking Summit, and thanks very much for talking with us today.
It's a pleasure, Craig. It always is.